The current market conditions have activist investors in overdrive, and the trend is expected to continue into the new year. Leslie Picker joins us right now. She's got more on potential boardroom battles coming in 2024, and this could be fun or interesting.
It's fun for us. I don't know about the boardrooms across corporate America, but here's a wild stat provided exclusively to us from Goldman Sachs. 1 out of every 6 companies in the S&P 500 currently has an activist invested. Some are active, others are just lurking there. Campaign levels are about 8% higher than the average over the last 4 years. But things could start to ramp up. Between December and February, more than 3/4 of U.S. public companies opened their nomination windows for dissidents to put forth directors. The environment appears to be conducive with a more optimistic macro outlook, lower volatility, high corporate cash hoards, and reasonable leverage levels. Goldman's global head of activism defense, Avi Mehrotra, tells me, quote, "These conditions provide fertile ground for activists to create the foundations to launch their campaigns." And activists are feeling emboldened after having returned nearly 8% in November alone. That's the best performing hedge fund sub-strategy among 28 published by HFR. As for what to expect in 2024, well, I'm told there will be more big cap fights, more activity globally, particularly in Europe and Japan, and more pressure on companies to do mergers and divestitures, guys.
All right, so Leslie, you mentioned that while this may be interesting for all of us who are watching, it is not fun for boards. Is there anything the boards can do to try and protect themselves from these things? What's the right strategy that seems to work? Do you bring them in under the tent? Do you try and stiff arm them? Do you try and appeal directly to your largest shareholders?
Well, each situation differs, obviously. It depends on what the activists may be asking for. But kind of in preparation, you have a lot of discussions taking place right now with boards and their advisors saying, okay, we have a pretty sizable cash amount. How should we deploy this to prevent an activist from coming in and saying, you should be using this for buybacks, or you should be using this to acquire companies? How should we be looking potentially at strategic divestitures in this current environment? Does it make sense to be kind of refocusing our company and, being opportunistic about different businesses that may be able to fetch a higher amount than they would be kind of in-house? So all of those conversations can take place ahead of time, and they do, quite frequently take place ahead of time in order to prevent an activist from coming in and kind of telling a board they should be doing things. But of course, the reason activists exist is because boards and activists don't always see eye to eye. And so that is kind of why we can potentially expect to see an uptick in activity in the first quarter of the year.
Leslie, thank you very much. Leslie Picker.
Okay, coming up on the other side of this, the CEO of Autodesk saying there are lessons from regulating social media that can and should be applied to artificial intelligence. That story and more when Squawk Box returns after this.